State visits are the highest ranked category of foreign visits to the US, where the head of the state visits the US on the formal invitation of the US President. The state dinner hosted by Biden's for Indian Prime Minister is crucial strategically, especially at a time when India and US are working together to strengthening the ties further. Before Prime Minister Modi, the only two state visits under President Joe Biden have been by France President Emmanuel Macron and South Korea's President Yoon Suk Yeol. Invitation for a state visit signifies that the US considers the guest nation an important friend and ally.
Check.
All right, from millet cakes to stuffed mushrooms, there's a lot on the Prime Minister's plate. While the state visit, of course, is a lot about optics, it also is about a lot of deliverables and it attaches a lot of significance. To talk about the same, we are being joined by Ambassador Atul Keshap. He's the president of US-India Business Council, USIBC. Thank you, sir, first of all, for speaking to Times Now. Mr. Keshap, sir, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is set for a historic state visit to the United States, and he's set to become the first Indian Prime Minister to address a joint session of the US Congress twice. Tell us about the significance of this visit and also how the last 9 years of a stable Modi regime have helped in deepening the Indo-US ties, sir.
Well, it's a very historic visit, and it really is quite marvelous that Prime Minister Modi will have the opportunity to address the U.S. Congress in joint session for the second time, joining a very, very rare group of world leaders who have done that. And I think it reflects the confidence and trust between the American people and the Indian people. We are the two largest and greatest democracies on earth. And I think that in these very troubled geostrategic times, both systems know that we have to rely on each other. And so this very rare honor in the midst of a state visit, which is only the third state visit in the history of our diplomatic relations, I think reflects the great affection and respect that the American people have for India. And it also shows how much India has come in the last decade in terms of economic growth, in terms of rising stature in the world, in terms of leadership on all of the big issues that are troubling the world right now.
And so shortly after the US became India's largest trading partner, India rose to become the 5th largest world economy and a bright star on the global economic map. Annual bilateral trade between the two countries has also been at all-time high. If I'm right, it's crossed about 191 billion milestone already. How significant is this relation to the progress really of India?
And ambitious, and I want to see U.S.-India relations get to 500 billion. You know, the U.S. has an echelon of $500 billion in trade and more with Mexico, Canada, the European Union, and China. And frankly, we have got to get India to that echelon. It's going to be good for India. It's going to be good for America. It's going to be good for all free people around the world. It will also reflect India's growth if we get to 500 billion. And so, you know, India may be a $7 or $10 trillion economy when that happens. So I'm deeply impatient, and I want to see rapid progress from the current level of 191 billion all the way up to 500 and beyond. I want India and the U.S. to be each other's largest trading partners and the two largest trading economies on earth.
Right, and sir, in a recently published opinion piece, you've mentioned that India and the US need to increase the ambition in their relationship to signal the world that the future of the global economy will indeed be anchored by democracy and human freedom. Can you elaborate on this idea further, and what could be a possible game plan to achieve the same according to you?
Absolutely. So we reside within high trust societies in the United States and India. And that is not true about many other countries around the world, but it is true about us. It's true about how our societies work. It's true about how our companies function. It's true about how our innovation cultures thrive. And so we need to extract the maximum advantage from that high trust ecosystem. Because we trust each other, we should have more agreements in place to govern the growth of trade and investment between our two countries. We ought to have a digital services agreement. We ought to have an agreement on data privacy. We ought to have an agreement on electronics manufacturing. We should have a bilateral investment treaty. And ultimately, we should have the biggest of all things, the free trade agreement. If we have those, then Indian companies investing in America, American companies investing in India will have a framework negotiated by both governments that enshrines the trust that we have in each other, establishes the parameters of the relationship, and gives companies the confidence to expand even further in this high trust ecosystem.
Well, absolutely. As you rightly said, it's a high trust ecosystem, and that friendship and camaraderie and bonhomie between the two countries only increasing and touching new highs with the latest state visit and the first and maiden state visit by the Prime Minister to the US. Thank you, sir, for joining us with your views on Prime Minister's US visit and also elaborating on the significance of the same. With that, we'll slip into a short commercial break. News and updates on the other side. Don't go anywhere.